What's up everyone, MK Tom Brady here. So in this video, I want to talk about the monster that is Johnny Cage, created by none other than Mortal Kombat 1. Now the Pro Comp finale is about 24 hours away, and after Combo Breaker and a lot of the online qualifiers, the talk has really come out that, hey, you know what? Johnny Cage is the best character in the game. This has been the talk online, on Twitter, that not only is Johnny the best now, you could argue that he was the best even day one. A lot of people will say Raiden as well, but Johnny was arguably just as strong as Raiden was. And this is day one. And even though other characters got nerfed around him, and Johnny also received some significant nerfs, it's not like they just slapped him on the wrist. They did nerf him pretty hard. He still seems to dominate and is considered the number one character in the game. So why is this? Well, this is because of three things. Number one, just his overall moveset. They pretty much cut and pasted a Mortal Kombat 9 character in MK1. So if you go back and play MK9, Johnny Cage, he has his 9-frame knee. He's got similar strings, 3-hit strings. Well, he's got a 3-hit string off his knee. It's a kick string, but it's a punch string after his knee. But he's got a 3-hit string off the knee. He's got that combos. He's got jab strings that are very similar, 1-1 into 2 kicks. He's got a lot of the same type of strings. Shadow kick, that's very fast punisher. A lot of the same plus frames off some of the same moves. So very similar outside of projectile, but his moveset definitely draws inspiration from that. And reality is if you put any MK or any character even similar to their MK9 self in this game, they're going to dominate. It's just the nature of those characters. See, back in those previous Mortal Kombat games, really fast mids, 9 and 10 frame mids were not uncommon. Whereas in MK11, these really fast mids being very common amongst characters became extremely uncommon, which opened the door to what we know as the turn-stealing meta. And lightning fast mids are even less common in MK1 than they were in MK11, where they weren't even all that common in that game. So the turn-stealing meta is a result of NRS really dialing back on characters having really fast mids overall. A fast mid now became a 13-frame mid, became a fast mid, quote unquote. Sub-Zero, what is his mid? 15 frames? And people say, oh my gosh, 15 frames is not that slow. That's a pretty quick mid. So when you start mids that are like 13 and 15 frames are now considered pretty quick, or even 13 frames can be considered a faster mid. But this opens up the door for what we know as the turn-stealing meta, where a character will do a move that's maybe -3, they'll stagger, and they'll down 1 right away. Their down 1 is 7 frames. If you add the -3 negative frames from the previous move that they staggered, this means their down 1 will come out in 10 frames. This means if you have a 10-frame mid, you trade. If your mid is 11 frames, you lose. 12, you lose. 13, you lose. So 99.99999% of the mids that you can follow up with will all lose or trade. If you try to follow up with a faster move, it's probably going to be a jab. It's a high, you lose. Down 1 will go under it. If you try to throw, you lose. Down 1 will go under it. So basically, the characters start doing staggers into down 1s, which will beat anything you do but your down 1. And of course, if you go to down 1, then they can stagger, backdash, have the down 1 whiff, or just block the down 1, take their turn right back. Or if you go to throw instead of down 1, they'll micro duck, which will beat out your high, still block your mid attempt, and go under the throw as well and get a punish. This is the mind game that we see all the time in this game. It was created in MK11, carries over to this game, and that's just because the lack of fast mids. Well, Johnny Cage doesn't have any of those problems because he has a 9-frame mid, which completely shatters that entire meta. Now, if you go to steal your turn, it's a combo. If you go to micro duck, 9-frame mid is too fast, you still get hit, you lose. So you pretty much have to just stand there and take it or legitimately take the throw. There's no kind of sneaky way around it, no turn-stealing meta. Johnny Cage completely obliterates the my turn, your turn, poke, 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 poke. He just shatters it. It does not exist with him. Many characters used to have fast mids back in the old NRS MK games. This is why the turn-stealing meta didn't exist at that point. Otherwise, it would have been there in those games as well. So that's a huge reason why he's so good. he's completely above that system that everybody else is kind of a slave to. The next reason is just his overall moves are good. He's very safe, plus on a lot of stuff, low negative frames on everything else. Fast Shadow Kick, great Punisher, has also armor with EX, becomes a launcher with several cameos. Just, very difficult to keep him out. And of course, if he doesn't have a projectile, but if he needs one, he can always choose the Cameo that has one, which is where I'm going to go next, the Cameo system. So phase 1, just his overall moveset is reason number 1. Number 2, the Cameo system. Whereas most characters in this game are bound to one cameo just to even exist. You maybe have less than a handful that can use maybe 2. Johnny Cage can use pretty much all of them and all the meta ones. So Cyrex is back. Guess what? He can use Cyrex and it's GG. He can use Chameleon and it's GG. He can use Goro and it's still extremely powerful, right? He can use Kung Lao. If he wanted to, he could use Kano, although he doesn't need to. Johnny Cage can use the most cameos and use them all extremely effective. In fact, when people will point to all this cameo diversity, I brought this up because in the last online qualifier, you had Chameleon that was chosen like 85 times. Goro was chosen like 30. Then you had Kung Lao chosen a few other ones. So those were the top 3. And people were like, hey, look, there's some diversity here and characters being picked in the 20s and 30s and Chameleon's obviously in the 80s. But there's some diversity. And now we have Cyrex. But the real truth is, if you look at how much Johnny Cage was picked, which is 50% more than the number 2 cameo, the number 2 character, as far as how many characters are picked, you'll see that the cameo diversity only comes from the fact that most of the characters picked are Johnny Cage, and Johnny Cage can use Chameleon, now Cyrex, Goro, and Kung Lao, because Johnny was the most picked character. It allowed for the most cameo diversity. So really, the cameo diversity was horrible. It only seemed good because the character diversity was terrible. So it wasn't like, oh, look at all these characters that pick all these cameos. No, it's one character that could pick a bunch of cameos, and because that character is picked so much, all those cameos are picked so much, which gives the illusion of cameo diversity, but it's really just because it was the Johnny Cage show. In fact, the numbers show Johnny Cage was picked 97 times total amongst the top 8s or top 16s in the Pro Series offline events. Raiden was picked, I believe, 65. So Johnny Cage was picked over 30 times more. Now, understand Raiden was nerfed, but that really lowered it. But the point is, Johnny Cage is just picked significantly more than everyone else. And even online, Johnny Cage is picked significantly more than everyone else in pro comp play. Obviously, these are top players. They want to win. They want to give themselves the best chance to win. But not only does he dominate just in his moveset, he dominates in the fact that this is a cameo game and nobody can use all the meta cameos besides Johnny Cage. Some have to use Chameleon, some have to use Cyrex, some have to use Kung Lao, some use Janet. Johnny uses all of them and uses them all ridiculously effective. And no real character but him says that. So he dominates in just his overall moveset, dominates in how he can use the cameo system. And then we have the third phase, and that he dominates in that there's no archetypes in this game. So most people don't realize this, but when there are no archetypes, there is still one archetype: offense. So an archetype is just basically what kind of character are you? Offensive, defensive, grappling, zoning. You fit into a certain style of character. Well, NRS has completely removed all archetypes because, well, the truth is most people found certain archetypes annoying. So NRS said, let's just remove them. So when you have archetypes, there is a good balance. There are so many different types. So there's offense, and there are multiple versions of this. You can have offense be it by way of high flyers who are all over the place, pressure characters, mixed characters. You can also have defense by way of high flyers or zoning characters or lame keep out characters, or you can have trapping characters. You can have grapplers. There's so many different archetypes of characters and versions of these that no one is actually better than the other. They all kind of, there's like a good counter, as in a rock, paper, scissors where there's always a counter to one of them somewhere. And this prevents one from dominating above all of them. Oh, the best archetype has got to be offensive or it's got to be defensive. No, there's a nice little triangle, a nice little rock, paper, scissors where they all kind of balance each other out. But when you remove one, well, that could be the counter to another. And then one has no counter, so one becomes better than them all. So it completely imbalances them. So if you remove one archetype, you have to remove them all. And this is what pretty much happened with Mortal Kombat. So now we just have none of the archetypes that would ever challenge an archetype like this, an offensive character, exist. So basically, you just have the offensive archetype, and there are really none of the other types that are really required for a nice kind of balance as far as styles, how characters play. So Johnny Cage benefits from lack of archetypes, benefits from being the absolute best at using the Cameo system, and being just extremely powerful in his damage, his moves. Because Johnny Cage does not lack damage either. So he's got great safety, he's got plus frames, low negative frames, completely destroys the my turn, your turn, turn stealing meta. So really, he succeeds in all phases of the game. And that's why Johnny Cage is as powerful as he is. And now anyone could see this coming a mile away except for the Mortal Kombat community. But this is the very same community that they brought Cyrax back. And then they say, well, no one's even going to pick Cyrax. We're just locked in right now on what we've been using. And then you watch everybody's training videos and they're all using Cyrax. So, go figure. Or where they actually think Cyrax is the same, or not the same because they nerfed his chip damage, whatever, which is true, and nerfed his damage off his combos with the upcopter, but they also gave him buffs like to his net. So they did buff Cyrax from day one as well as nerfed him from day one at the same time. So this is a community who really doesn't know what they're saying at all. But give me your thoughts on what you feel about what people are saying online about Johnny Cage right now. And I'm not saying Johnny Cage is going to win the Pro Series, but he probably will be the most commonly picked character there. And I'm just explaining why this character is the way he is. And really, he'll probably be a super top 2 to 3 character no matter what they do to the game, just because they're not going to magically put in archetypes. His moveset is just what it is, so it will always be able to flow with any top cameo. So regardless of the cameo, regardless of whatever they do, he will still always be able to use the most cameos. So he'll always be a top character. May not even win the Pro Series, but I believe he'll probably be the most commonly picked character in the Pro Series. But always love reading you guys' comments. Always love reading the thoughts you guys have. As always, thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for more content.